This week on Quality Digest Live, can your behaviors affect measurement results?
Plus, we talk jobs, manufacturing, and quality. That and more when we come back.
Today's sponsor for Quality Digest Live is Imada.com, your source for torque and force measurement. ISO 9001 registered, ISO 17025 accredited. Visit Imada.com.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for November 11th, 2011. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief, Dirk Ducharme. So let's start this week with a couple of interesting news items. The first one up, the kilogram ain't what it used to be.
Nope.
At least that may be the case as soon as measurement experts at NIST and other national measurement institutes iron out a few wrinkles. The International General Conference on Weights and Measures has approved a plan to redefine 4 of the 7 base units of the International System of Units, or SI. And they will do this in terms of fixed values of natural constants rather than manufactured artifacts. For instance, and this is really the biggie, the reference for the kilogram will no longer be the kilogram, which is literally an original platinum iridium prototype whose mass unfortunately has drifted a bit over time. And that artifact is kept in a nest of 3 bell jars somewhere in France. And it is the reference against which all kilograms are measured. And the fact that it's drifting isn't really good for a reference.
Sure.
So the most likely new reference will employ a device called a watt balance. This device measures the force required to balance a 1 kilogram mass artifact against the pole of Earth's gravity and something called Planck's constant, which I don't really understand. And anyway, accurately monitoring the voltage and current of all this. So this won't take place for a while. It's still being worked on. So until that time, a kilo is still a kilo. And in California, that's a big deal. Okay,
yes, it is.
What's your story?
My story. Okay, in the news this week. Loyalty programs. A recent Gallup survey looked at loyalty and reward programs and discovered that they're surprisingly ineffective at activating customers. An activated customer in this context is one in which that person buys more from the brand due to the reward or loyalty program. Now, companies spend $2 billion on these programs. So what do they get for their money? According to Gallup, not really that much. For example, 90% of grocery store shoppers have a favorite chain, but only half of those shoppers participate in that chain's loyalty program, and less than 1/3 of those are activated. Looking at credit card usage, 74% of respondents have a favorite card, but fewer than half of them are activated. The story is much the same with department stores, airlines, and others. The moral of the story? Despite the perception that these programs help companies carve out market share, the reality is that there's really little discernible financial impact, and certainly nothing that would justify the expenditure in terms of time or money.
That's right. And another story that we covered this week also deals with the issues of perception versus reality. Just a few days ago, the Coordinate Metrology Society announced the results of its study, How Behavior Impacts Your Measurement. The report, while not necessarily surprising, was certainly eye-opening,
yes.
And we've covered this story before. If you'll remember, what we talked about is a study was done to see whether even among measurement experts, people whose job is ostensibly to take precision measurements using, in this case, dimensional measurement tools, that even though this is their skill set, supposedly, that they have certain behaviors and certain, in some cases, lack of knowledge that actually prevents them from taking accurate and reliable measurements. Now, I don't know a lot about this, but we have a person on the show with us today via Skype who can tell us all about this study. This is Kieth Bevan, who's the Training Product Development Manager for the National Physical Laboratory, or NPL, in the UK. And Kevin, are you on the line with us?
Kieth?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
Good morning.
Terrific. Well, thanks, Kevin.
Keith.
So it's late in the evening there, or not too late. What, 7 o'clock there right now?
Yeah, 7 p.m. at the moment.
So we got you at home after dinner.
Yes.
All right. Well, tell us really briefly, just to catch our audience up, what the purpose was for the study.
The key aspect of the study was to have a look and see whether core measurement principles and behaviors can affect measurements when you're using the current technologies that are available. So it was really important for us to see if we can show similar things to what people do with basic measuring tools.
Okay, and what did you guys actually find? Well, actually, let's back up a little bit. Also, really briefly, tell us kind of what the experiment was that was done at the CMS.
Okay, the experiment was we had 3 different tasks that had been set up with different measuring equipment, and what we had done is split it into 2 sessions. Session 1 was to ask people to take measurements without any guidance, unless they were in a situation where they were struggling to take that measurement, they wasn't sure what to do, they could ask questions. On the second day, we were asking them to follow set procedures. So the measurements were very similar, but we changed the way in which we wanted people to do things. And those 3 measurements involved using a laser tracker, using an articulated arm, and also using a scanner as well.
Okay, and what did you? What were the results of the study? Just briefly, and then we kind of get into the implications here.
Okay, the results basically was we managed to collect around 150 sets of measurements over the 3 tasks. The variability changed dramatically from day 1 to day 2. We doubled the number of participants through the process on day 2 to day 1. So we started to see that things like procedurizing the tasks did make a difference. We also found that people didn't do what they wanted to do when they followed, obviously, on day 2. On day 1, we found people were doing things in an ad hoc way, which we monitored.
Okay. Now, what are the implications of the study? What does this really tell us about the, I don't know, for lack of a better word, maybe the quality of the measurements that are being taken in critical applications like aerospace or nuclear or that type of thing?
I think what it actually showed is that there are a series of questions that people should ask, even if it's themselves, before they take a measurement, to try and reduce the possibility of variation and the doubt about the results that they are collecting, so the uncertainty. They can be more confident with those measurements based around a key set of behaviors.
Now, is this in any way related to, let's say, the sophistication of the equipment that's available to the average metrologist right now? I mean, it seems to me, and I'm not an expert in this area, but you have a piece of equipment that looks like it pretty much does the measurement for you. Is there a certain amount of where the user is just trusting the equipment and trusting that they're going to push a button and get a result and that it's right?
Yeah, I think there is an element of that, but I think the key point is that people should be able to question that. I think the problem is if an individual doesn't know that they could be getting a poor quality measurement because of the way they're particularly doing something. They're relying on a number that's coming back out of a computer. They should ask a series of questions.
Now, you mentioned something to me in an earlier conversation. I think, trying to remember the way you said you asked a question. If you took a measurement and the measurement was within, let's say, the past boundary of what you were looking for, would you take another measurement? And if it wasn't, would you take another? Can you, maybe, I'm not sure I'm getting, can you describe that a little bit to me?
Yeah, the question was to specific individuals. I just said, if that result you've collected there is shown within the allowable deviation, so the tolerance, would you potentially measure it more than once? And the answer was, no, I probably wouldn't. And I said, well, if you measured it and the answer was actually outside the specification, would you measure it more than once? Oh, yes, definitely. And so the implications is how do we know that the first measurement that showed within the specification was correct? Right. So this is part of the questioning.
So, and that's really where we are getting down to in that particular instance, where we're really talking about something based on really on behavior. I'm getting the answer I expect, therefore I don't question it. Right. If I'm not getting the answer I expect, well then I must be doing something wrong, or potentially doing something wrong, so I'll go back and measure again. But you're saying that should actually be happening all the time, no matter what.
And how do you know that your expectation going in is correct?
And how do you know your expectation? Exactly.
I mean, your expectation might be one thing, and the data may show something else. Maybe the data is correct,
right.
But yet since your expectation going in was incorrect,
right.
Maybe you're going to remeasure and you're not going to trust what the instruments are telling you.
Yeah, right, yeah.
It's about confidence in the results that you've obtained. Even if you were doing do-it-yourself at home, you're building something, you're putting a picture up, I would measure something and I would then check it again just to make sure that I haven't made a mistake before I drill a hole in the wall.
Right.
So it can relate to whatever measurement that you're doing. Confidence.
Now, is this... Obviously, this experiment was done in the United States at a metrology conference here. Is this something that you have found is it unique to the quality of training or whatnot going on in the United States? Are you seeing the same thing in the UK or other parts of the world?
It's everywhere, and it's variable. It's not unique whatsoever, and it's not unique to dimensional measurement either. Okay. It can be across whatever type of measurement somebody's doing. As I say, it's not a unique thing.
Now, is this been a problem that, or maybe you can't even answer this, is this something that has always been around, or has it been over the last, 10, 20, 30 years, whatever, that measurement has gotten more, sloppy, for lack of a better word?
I think it has changed. I think if you go back many years, then you probably would say that it probably didn't happen to the level that it is now. And for what reason, I can't answer that. I'm not sure, but it seems as though maybe we've been reliant on technology giving us the right answer. I don't really know. It's something that I think needs to be addressed. Is probably what's the solution? How do we sort it out?
Yeah, and I think that's. And before we get to a potential solution, I in my opinion, this is, and from what I've heard particularly from aerospace people, this really is a big deal because you've got people who are taking measurements on pieces of equipment that are where lives potentially depend upon the accuracy of the measurement. Mm-hmm. So you really want, I mean, maybe not exaggerating too much, but that lives may literally depend upon the quality of the measurements and the accuracy of the measurements being taken. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it depends obviously on the type of measurement that you're taking, but you're right. I mean, it's all about reducing the uncertainty in the result and knowing exactly what the quality of the data is. Okay.
So we've kind of set up what the problem is, and you guys have verified with your experiments that what is happening, what you suspected is happening, really is happening. Is there some behavioral and training issues that are coming into play here? So what is the solution? Where do you guys go from here now that you have the study results?
Well, part of the solution is to contribute to the certification committee through the CMS, where they're looking at qualified operators. And so therefore, this element of what we've done is about trying to contribute into that particular process so that we can start to address these issues. And as I say, it's a global thing, so through all of the training that goes ahead in anything to do with measurement, it's a key part of the process. It's about your preparation, about your delivery, and then about what you do afterwards. And so it's about building on that for the future. Okay.
Well, Kieth, we're out of time here now. I really appreciate you spending some time with us to tell us about this study and the importance of it and where it's going from now. This is actually a topic that I could talk about for a while because it's pretty interesting. It is, human behavior and how it affects even the things that we think we would trust as I'm trained to do this. I should be doing it right, but my own behavior comes into play.
Well, and we'll be covering it more as we go along. This will be something that we'll be keeping our eye on, and Kieth, we encourage you to continue to keep us abreast of your findings and your research going forward, and we'll continue to bring it to our user group as well.
Okay.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss it.
Sure. Thank you, Keith. Have a nice night.
Thank you, Keith. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And really where this is going, as you alluded to, as Keith alluded to at the tail end of that interview, is understanding that the employees, that the workers that are at the business end of this are the ones that need to have these skills and need to be transferable skills.
Right.
You need to be able to say, which CMS is working very hard towards, well, I'm certified. I'm qualified now to use this particular piece of equipment. I've been, they've looked at me. I've been verified that I can use a CMM or a laser tracker or a scanner, whatever it may be. I have these tools, phonogrammetry, any of these different modalities, and the idea that you can take that and go to other places, other opportunities perhaps in your career, and because you've been validated and verified, your new employer can trust that you have those skills in place.
Or at least a higher level of trust in any case, yeah.
In any case, because this is a big issue, and it's going to actually feed into the article I'm going to talk about here in a minute. This idea that a lot of labor is in a state of turnover. A lot of people are retiring who have been in the space, and CMS talks about this all the time, that good people that have built up a lot of skills over the years are leaving, and they're being replaced by younger workers in many cases who don't have those skills.
Right.
And the net result of that is that there's a decrease in the quality of the measurement and of the manufacturing that's going on. Now, this was addressed by Thomas Cutler, partially addressed by Thomas Cutler in his article that you have up on the screen there. U.S. labor is a quality issue, and it certainly is. I think there's no question it's a quality issue, especially going into 2012, and Cutler begins his article talking about kind of the political climate a little bit, that we're going into an election year, and without a doubt, jobs are going to be the number one issue, I think, in this presidential campaign of 2012. So we'll see how that plays out. But Cutler's approach on his article, which ran in Monday's issue of Quality Digest Daily, was to look at this from a staffing perspective. He's talking about Resource MFG, Resource Manufacturing, which is a staffing company working with manufacturers, and looking at what U.S. manufacturers are asking for in terms of bringing people on staff. And the number one thing they really want is they want people to be productive from day one. They want you to be able to come on in a manufacturing environment and be able to, just as Keith mentioned, that they have some validation that you can take measurements accurately and that you understand what those tools are about. More than that, they want to know that you have an understanding of quality as a thing, as an environment that you work within. What Lean means, and Six Sigma, and ISO, and all these different elements.
I think they want employees to be more plug and play simply than just at the skill levels. They want them to be plug and play in terms of a quality culture, as well as understand what does it mean when you come into an environment where they're using ISO 9000 or Lean or Six Sigma or TQM or whatever. What does that mean? Because it's more than just a job skill. It's also knowing how your skill ties into the bigger picture of the organization from a quality culture point of view.
Exactly right. And this is, and it's framed in this article as a competition issue. And U.S. manufacturing certainly, from a competitive perspective, has some things going against it. I mean, the costs that are built for U.S. manufacturer to build something are many times higher. Let's be honest, are many times higher than they would be in some Asian markets and other markets, which is obviously the cost for a lot of the outsourcing. So my take on this was, well, all right, if that's an established problem, that we know that as American manufacturing, that other countries can do it cheaper, well, where can we compete and what is the differentiator? And I think one of the ideas is this idea of our labor pool. We have a remarkably high, historically high level of unemployment in this country right now. That means there's a lot of great people out there who need work, who need jobs. They have training, they have skills, and they're ready. They're ready to plug and play in many cases. And that's a competitive advantage for U.S. manufacturers, the idea that so let's say for China as an example, we talked to Jim Harrington about China not long ago. In China, if they need to create a new factory or bring in employees, gosh, you're not sure what that labor force looks like. You have a big level of lack of confidence, perhaps, that those workers are going to be able to step in and understand a quality culture, understand how to measure, and understand how to do these things. In America, it's really much less of an issue. It also goes back, though, in a big measure, it goes back to the American worker who may be out of work. Now, let's say you've been out of work for a year or 2 years, and there's many people, unfortunately, in that circumstance. American manufacturing, there are jobs out there. And American manufacturers need good people, again, who can step in and do the work. So it's incumbent upon you, if you're looking for a job, to make sure your skills are at that level, to make sure you understand what quality is all about, to understand, like we say, the big picture items here, and to make sure that technically your skills are up to snuff. So you can step in and you can help these American manufacturers. It's the ultimate win-win. I mean, it's a win-win. It's a win for the manufacturers in America because they get better workers who can do better work, take better measurement, and ensure better quality. And it's a win for the employee as well, who can get a job and can keep a job.
Sure.
So this article I found very interesting for those reasons. And again, it's another thing we're going to be covering. We're going to be looking at as we go.
That's right.
Go along.
The job market and the labor situation and what's happening with our skilled workforces. Super important.
And it's 2012 coming up, and certainly, we'll be
you're
hearing
gonna be hearing a lot more
this,
about
this issue in the year coming up, so look out for that.
All right. Well, let's move on to today's Tech Corner. You know, we've covered, let's go over here to our, squeeze past
the gauge cam.
Our gauge cam. You know, we've covered wireless multimeters in the past, so I won't go into a lot of detail about why they're very useful tools, but I do want to talk about one today. This is from Redfish Industries. It's called the iDVM. You'll notice that the DVM itself is simply a box, a black box, no display. It's got the probes coming out, does your usual multimeter stuff, volts, ohms, amps, milliamps, millivolts, AC, DC, that sort of stuff. No display, because the display is actually either an iPhone or an iPad or an iPod Touch. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot about what the multimeter does because other things do the same, other products do the same thing. What this has that is very unique is data logging capability. So I'm going to just jump right into data logging. If we look at our iPhone, in this case, app, you see a digital multimeter on there, and it would I could take the probes here and I could start measuring things, and you would see the real-time display change as I mess around with the probes. If I click on the graph button down here and get closer to the camera, you can see it's also looks something like a strip chart recorder, and you can see that it's taking data, and that data is being displayed on this log down here on this strip chart. It isn't currently collecting data right now, it's just displaying it. I'm not storing data anywhere, but we can. So I'm going to set up for some data logging. I'm going to come over here to my settings, and I can set up a sample rate of anywhere from 20 samples per second down to 1 sample per hour. I'll leave it at 20 for now. I can set up a recording time. If I want to do unattended data logging, I can set this up to record data for a minute or an hour or up to 24 hours, which means I'll start recording, and at the specified time it will simply stop recording for unattended data logging. So I have it set up right now for 20 samples per second. We're going to go back, and I'm going to select millivolts. I'm going to select millivolts there. Oh, come on. Millivolts, there we go. And it's collecting, and I'm going to hit record. Now, while it's recording some data, I'll tell you a couple other things you can do with this. Right now it's set up to take a data stream, so it's collecting data at 20 samples per second. You can also set this up to do point at a time, where every time you hit the record button, it simply measures 1 point. The other thing this will do, which I think is really useful and very interesting, is it will talk to you. If you can't see the display, maybe you got your head inside a box and you can't really see the display. I put my head inside a box all the time. Come on. But it will talk to you. It will tell me what the reading is. So if I hit 7.1. Here, I'll hold this up to my mic here.
7.6.
See if you can hear that.
7.6.
Okay, I'm tired of that. Okay, so hopefully you heard that. And that actually is, it seems like a kind of a gimmicky feature, but there are times when I've had a multimeter and I swear I wish the thing was talking to me. Okay, we've collected enough data. I'm going to turn my recording off. Now I'm going to come up here to my file, and you see it's stored some files. The one at the top is the file I've just stored. If I click on it, well, what do we see? Well, we have a graph up at the top. I have some statistics at the bottom. Being an iPhone, iPad, I could zoom into these statistics. I can also look at the samples. So these are actually my sample data. It's got a date and time stamp over here on the left, and the reading here on the right. And of course, as you might expect, all this can be exported. We'll get to the export in just 1 second. I do want to show you one other feature. So let's say you've taken all your data, and you're now ready to send it out. You need to send it to another program so you can do analysis on it. So you're going to, let's say, email it to yourself. Well, first of all, we got to disconnect from the DVM. The DVM actually operates on Wi-Fi. So I'm going to disconnect from the DVM. I'm going to choose my local area network, which would be the QD network. Or if you had a broadband device, you would actually connect to your broadband. Now I'm going to go back into my DVM. Okay, so now I'm back into my data here. I'm going to say, let's go back and look at our data again, and let's look at the details. So let's say I'm a remote maintenance technician. I'm doing pipeline checks. So I want to put in where I took this data. So I can click in my description box, and I can just say this is a test. I can enter in my name as my user, and the next one is really slick. I typed in dork. that purely was an accident,
and not
I'm
for
sure.
the first time.
Not the first time. I can ask for my location. This is a device that knows where my location is. I can click on my location. It will allow me now to enter my latitude and longitude and my street address, if it's known, into my details. Now, suppose you are a remote maintenance tech and you're out making, doing your remote maintenance, let's say on a pipeline, and you have to record where on the pipeline you are. I have now just recorded my latitude, longitude, and my address into my details. Now I can save it. I can now export my data, and I have several ways of how I can export data, but let's say we can export it as email. I want to send, let's say, my actual samples, which would be in CSV format, a picture of the actual graph, which I can send, let's say, as a PDF. I can also send it as a PNG, and also the statistics that were calculated by the IDVM software itself. And I can just say, let's mail all that to me. And then I bring up my mail program and email that data to myself. And now I can go to my computer, download that data, and there we go. So coming back around here. So here's the interesting thing about this. This is a, this product costs about $300. Mm-hmm. But you have to have an iPhone or an iPad to rent it. So you might go, gosh, if I don't have one of those, do I now want to pop for, let's say, $200 for an iPod Touch, which you can also use with it? Depends on your application. Maybe yes, maybe no. If you are a field, to me, the really interesting thing is this whole ability to data log and data collect over a scheduled amount of time, and the ability to log location. I can see where this and even the purchase of an iPhone, iPad device, later on hopefully Droid, is super useful. I mean, I can really see where a $500 expenditure what might make a lot of sense for this type of product. So it's very interesting. It's unique. There really isn't anything that does this with the data logging part of it.
Right, and that's exactly what we're trying to do here on Tech Corner on QDL is present these kind of unique solutions. If you have one that you want us to cover here on Quality Digest Live, just email us as usual at QDL@qualitydigest.com, and we'll take a look at it, and we'll get back to you, and we'll let you know if we're going to put it on the air.
That's right.
So great. So thank you for Redfish for providing that to us.
That's right.
A wonderful solution. And before we close, I also want to thank our sponsor, Amada, our sponsor of this week's show. And look out for information on Amada at the bottom of the screen here, and click on them.
That's right. And also remember, it is Veterans Day.
Yes.
So thanks to all of you veterans. And hey, if you're out and around and you see one of our service people in uniform, walk up and thank them for their service.
Yes, please do. Well, that's our show.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week with another week of content in QDD and QDL. So we'll see you then, and have a great weekend.
So long.
Three, two, one, fire.